rules. There are no rules. Have fun and be yourself. I love that. Okay, introduce yourself. Okay, well, my name is Geena, and I am 30 years old. I teach fitness classes and I do personal training. My husband and I just started our own ministry this last year, and I have a stepson who's 3, and we are expecting a child in July. So just transitioning from this like 20s, really like being a hot mess, figuring things out. I worked at Topgolf for a long time, so I was a server, and I just again was teaching classes and just kind of like dilly-dallying. I've only had one desk job, 2 technically, and I knew by 24 that was like so not going to be my thing. So a lot of my 20s has been figuring out what this looks like for me. I also danced professionally after college for the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I did MBA for a little bit, and then started this like journey, I guess. I went to school for public relations to Westminster College, and honestly, if I could tell myself anything, I would have not went to school, because so much I've learned is through networking and like just the power of gab and being able to talk to people and make connections. So much of like what my fitness career has simply been from training and meeting people. So I became a certified personal trainer in 2022. And I worked at a gym in East Liberty, and that's really where I started to like meet a lot of people. And then I started my own business at the very beginning of 2024. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what it was going to look like. I just started running classes out of my friend's space. It was a beautiful like warehouse with these like windows, and truly like imposter syndrome. I was just like, I've got an LLC, and I'm like, we're going to roll with it. It was called Prana Movement. And they were really successful. And I started teaching classes like 3 times a week, and then started, organically getting my own clients, like doing one-on-one personal training. And like, praise God, it's been sustaining me since. Which leads me to this point. So it's been very sustaining, but always nerve-wracking, because it's like when you bet on yourself, you just, is my income going to be the same every month? What if I lose a client? These what if thoughts? But I've been so blessed that like the transitions have just been seamless. Like I started teaching again in a studio called Flow, and I absolutely love it. I teach sculpt classes, mat Pilates, power, vinyasa, and that might be all of them. I can't even think right now. And I absolutely love it. And now that I'm expecting a child, I am starting to think more like, okay, how can I show up, but not physically have to be doing things all the time, especially like this first year, wanting to be home with him and just be a mom. And so I'm currently working on building some type of platform that will basically host all the things that make me me. A part of our ministry it's called Grit and Grace, which is the women's like mentorship, women's part of the ministry, where we blend fitness and the word and just bring it together. So women can still have this community. They can still have the cute kiki. They can have the photo booth and the swag bags. But at the heart of it is giving them Jesus, right? And so for me, that's like, if you took like Geena core, that's like who I am. So that's where I'm working through right now, is trying to figure out what building that looks like and how to just be, because I'm so good at being authentically me in person and then making that transition online. So that's where we are currently. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how authentically are you living your life, online and offline? It's funny. I honestly think both very authentically. I just actually told my mom this on the phone today. I have always, while I'm not like a confrontational person, I've always spoke my mind though. Like I've never had an issue going against the grain in what I think. Yeah, I think that I am maybe authentic to a fault. Like sometimes I'm an overshare, But I do love that about me, is the way that I have an ability, a grace to make other people feel really comfortable with me, because I genuinely care and I want to know. I don't know if it's the Italian in me. I don't know if it's the Christ in me, but I really love to like just know people and like how many siblings you have, and for no reason other than like my brain, I don't know, because I think that just tells a lot about somebody, and we all come from totally different backgrounds and stories, and it just really helps you be able to like draw connection more with people. I love to remember things about my students or my clients, and just it makes people feel special. So I do believe I'm very authentic. I can't really say there's much that I like. If someone were to ask me, like, I guess in some regard people would call me bold, because I just, I can't not talk about the Bible and how it talks about that being a Christian is the narrow path. It's going to go against a lot of the grain, almost everything the world tries to tell you. It's different. And so I knew that growing up as a Christian, but really the last few years stepping into this has been like that. You really have to get that fear of man just out of you. And so that's been hard to work through, because there is this like people pleaser part of me where it's like, I don't want to offend any, that resistance that comes up. But the more I practice it, and then I'm like, oh, I'm safe. If I deliver this with love and I do it and I say like a Geena spin on it, like it's okay. You know what I mean? So I think because I just cannot, I literally told my mom this morning, I am not somebody that can be, what's the word? Not necessarily bullied into something, but that, or like peer pressured, or I've just never been that way. I'm like, no, I don't want to do. I'm just like maybe a little hard headed about it too. But so on a scale of 1 to 10, I would honestly say 10.5 is where I'm going. Okay, talk to me about your faith. How do you help women honor God through movement and discipleship? So yeah, I think, again, grit and grace, what that has been created to be, kind of embodies all of that. I started leading Bible studies probably 3 years ago now. I went to a young adults service, and one of the youth pastors, who actually ended up marrying my husband and I, said to me, have you ever been told you have great leadership skills? And I was like, yeah, I actually, I have. And he was just really encouraging me, and he's like, I think you would be awesome at leading a group. And I have just been doing it, and I love it. I love facilitating. I love hosting and like hospitality in general. But there's something about like pouring into people that like so energetically fills me up. Like I'm an extrovert to the extreme, in the sense that I can be so tired from like talking all day long, but then what refills me is like talking more. It's so bizarre. I'll like get in the car and I'm like, wow, I'm exhausted. Calls my girlfriend. Like, it's just like, that's what like, I can't explain it. So I would say helping women honor God through movement and discipleship is, well, preaching the truth, giving them the word, but again, in a way that is like of love, because I've lived in the world and I've done things. Like, I don't feel that I'm a hypocrite in a lot of ways, because I've walked through things and I've seen the fruit of those things. And it's like, if I could tell myself now in my early 20s what I was trying to do in my own strength, like it would have saved me a lot of crap. So I feel like that's my heart for it, is like, I think the pain we experience and we go through can be used, it can all be used for good. And I really dealt with, like most of us probably, debilitating anxiety and panic in my earlier 20s. Right after I did professional dancing, it so messed with my head. And it was just horrible. And I'm grateful for that season though, because I would never have the empathy I do now for people who have these mental ailments or struggle with these different things, because if you don't know what a panic attack feels like until you have one, like it's real. It's really real in your head. And so I always take that season like with so much gratitude, because I have helped disciple so many women like organically through that, just because of my own, just sharing your experience and like what helped me when I was experiencing anxiety. I wanted to learn everything I could about it. I bought books. I was so serious about helping myself and like not wanting to stay in that place, like not like succumbing to that was so big for me. And a lot of my faith is what pulled me out of that. And so I just feel like there's so many people that the crutch is, and unfortunately from my experience, when I had my first panic attack, I was so freaked out. I went to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. And they just, prescribe you, what's it called? Xanax, right? But just to calm the physical symptoms. But then it started this loop of like, I went to see a doctor and it was like, here's a script for a medication. And then I started talk therapy, and what really freed me was the one therapist I talked to. Her name was Jill. I don't know where she is now, but she was awesome. And she just, I don't know, like, I felt like that was my identity, because that's what, like, they tell you. They're like, you have generalized anxieties, or you have, right? And something about that didn't sit right with me, that, like, because I identified with them, like, my anxiety. No, I'm experiencing feelings of anxiety, but that's not who I am. And so I went on this mission because I didn't like the way the medicine made me feel. It made me feel like I was dependent on it, and then it was like I felt numb, and then it was just, it started a whole other problem. So I set out for probably the next 2 years to really, like, help myself. And I had a Christian therapist who was also lovely, and through scripture and through the word, like, I really feel that I was freed from it. I really do. And not to say, anxiety is a good thing in the sense of we need that, like, fight or flight sometimes. But it does not own me, and it does not, like, spiral how it used to, because I can recognize it now and be like, we're not going to do this. Like, we're just not. It's so mental. So mental. But goodness, for so long, I could not understand that. It felt like I was, like, I would see it as a dark cloud, and I could not. It's like depression, right? Because they accompany each other, because you feel depressed because you're anxious, and you don't want it, and you feel like no one else understands what you're going through. And they go hand in hand. And it felt like this dark cloud that I was, like, so scared of, that it made it bigger. And then once I realized it was, like, actually nothing, it had no power over me anymore. So I just feel like that in itself was such a good, like, ministry point for me, because you're going to take more advice from someone that's, like, walked through it, right? And I was engaged before, and he I can laugh about now, but girl, it was heavy. I was 20. I was so young. I say to my parents all the time, like, no one thought, like, maybe she shouldn't do this so young. But he was having, like, a full-blown affair with the woman I nannied for, like, tea. And it was so heartbreaking. I am from a small town. Everybody knows everybody. And that's what it was. He owned a business, he owned a gym, and that's how I got into fitness. So, like, again, God will use anything for good, but at that time, a man was my identity, and it caused so much strife in my life, because I just became everything, like, he liked and he wanted, and I had no sense of, like, worth at that point, and we've all probably walked through something like that, where you get, like, delulu over, like, a certain human. And anywho, I digress. It came out, he was having an affair, and I was her literal babysitter. And so it was just, I say all that to say, not to be, like, negative, but, like, the redemption story in that is insane. And so I feel like that's another element for me, is I can really understand betrayal. I can really understand, like, everybody knowing your business, and it was so vulnerable and so exposing. And one day we were, like, planning a wedding. We're in a house. I have a dog who I still have, and then the next day I'm back home with my parents, and my life, I lost friendships. Like, you would think it would be the roles were reversed, but it was almost like I was in a parallel universe. You know what I mean? Like, nothing in his life changed, but everything for me changed. And it was like, okay, now I have to rebuild. And I read a book called Forgiving What You Can't Forget by Lisa Terkars. She's a women's leader in ministry, and she walked through something different. They were married a long time, but an affair. And that book really started my journey of healing, because it was just about how we are called to forgive and how that frees us. Like, it's not for the other person, you know? And yeah, so that was a really long-winded answer, but I use all of these experiences and I'm grateful for them, because I am now able to come from that, like, that angle of like, listen, I've been there. I understand feeling so alone. I understand feeling like, I mean, you know, I had just overcame anxiety, and then that whole situation happened. And I will say, through that entire breakup, I never had one panic attack. I had fits, right? I was upset. But I'm telling you, there was a peace that like surpassed all understanding. And I just knew that I knew it was all working for me and not against me. So I feel very called to that, like, especially young girls who, like, I mean, we've just all done, I shouldn't say we've all done it, but I've seen how many times we just get lost in that sauce, you know? So I would say there's a lot there to unpack. Okay, on the topic of identity, what did you have to unlearn about yourself before you could truly start owning who you are? I had to learn that I'm a child of God. I had to learn that what God said about me was true, that I am fully loved as I am right now, that nothing could separate me from that love, that I was created in his image, that as I stand alone, no person could ever take away from that, regardless of like what your childhood looked like, or, you know. And it's hard, I think, for us to understand this, because we only know human condition. We only know human relationship. Even if you had amazing parents, like, people are going to fail you at some point. And I think, like, for me, as corny as that sounds, that was it for me. It was just like speaking that over myself, because if not, I mean, coming from the NBA, where it was like so brutal in the sense of like, if you gain 2 extra pounds, you're sitting out, right? Because there's an image. And I understand that. It is the industry. If you choose to be a part of it, it's like, you just got to go with it. You sign a contract when you join the team where it's like, they can tell you at any day, anytime, you have to change your hair color. You have to, you know, wear outfits like this. You get a celebrity look-alike, and then they basically try to like make you. So talk about identity issues, right? When you're like 22 years old, coming out of like a really small college and like shelter. And so that really messed, like, I was a dancer my whole life. My girlfriend and I talk about this all the time. The performance, like, letting that die to yourself, like feeling like you have to perform for people to like you, or like, because it's like a dog eat dog world in that industry, and you are so disposable. And it's like, I went to a performing arts high school, and I was a musical theater major. And I mean, being in 9th grade, it's not a typical high school. There's a lot of talent. And it was good. It was good for me to see. Like, it humbles you, but also, like, you're just like a kid, you know, and you want to be a part of musicals and you want to have fun, but it was so competitive because, I mean, some of these people, they went on to Broadway. Like, that was the goal for a lot of them. You know what I mean? So it can really, really, really mess with your psyche. Like, what people think of you and this approval thing. And I just think for me, and then it became in my early 20s, like, attached to a man and like what he thought about me. And like, I remember I met my ex when I was freshly 21, and just being so about whatever he was about. I'm like, you like blondes? I'll be blonde tomorrow. Like, it was just so bad. Like, I'll do this, I'll do that, you know, I'll sleep with you. Of course, like, I'll give my whole self to you. And then when you still don't want me, it affects like everything about me. Like, okay, I gave you the best parts of me, and like, it's still not enough. You know, that creates that, like, so I think for me, I had to unlearn that quick. Like, my worth is not in my body count, or that people have, that I even have a nice body, or because for a long time I think there was so much vanity because I was in that industry of like caring so much what my body looked like. And it just, now I just preached this on Friday. I'm like, girls, I used to be the one that would say dress how you want to the gym, which, like, yeah, and I would wear these little fits, and I'm like, I don't dress for men, I dress for me. But if I was being very honest with myself, I wanted attention. You know what I'm saying? And it's a fine line. I'm not like saying that to condemn anybody. But it was a conviction for me at some point, because I was like, what am I doing this for? And then we get mad when men look at us a certain way or approach us a certain way. And it's like, what, can you blame them? I mean, my pants are literally at my butthole. Um, so being more modest was something, I feel like it's sexy to be modest, and the older I get, the more I like embrace that. But goodness, I did not have any working knowledge on that when I was 25, 26. And I would have, if I heard this from a woman, I'd be like icked out. You know what I mean? So I understand, like, if people aren't there. But for me, I really had to unlearn that it's not about what my body looks like. And now that I'm growing a tiny human, it's like, you really have to die to yourself in that way and understand things are going to change, and not look like they did for a bit, and whatever. And then I think what I had to learn was my identity is in Christ, and if I was created, I was created on purpose for a purpose, then again, nothing else the world is going to tell me. It's all fleeting. At the end of the day, this all goes away. So for me, it's just like, if I have my firm foundation, then you can't, like, there's a worship song that says rain came, wind blew, but my house was built on you. And that's exactly how I feel. Like, yeah, storms in life come, and people come and they go, and people are going to say mean things, and you're not going to please everybody. And like, but if you have a firm foundation, then it doesn't matter. So that was the biggest thing I had to learn. Comparison is something a lot of women struggle with. Oh, girl. When did you realize comparison was stealing your joy? Oh my God, so young. So young. Again, I think growing up in dance, and I always felt like so intimidated by like really good dancers, or in musical theater, like just, these triple threats. And I think, oh my gosh, I don't know. It starts so young, I feel like, for all of us, because again, you can be taught it all you want, but once you're in the world, you just kind of have to find out for yourself. And we always think the grass is greener. And I always say this, but the grass is green where you water it. And for the longest time, even in my marriage, it's just like, it's the simple principle of gratitude. If I take my eyes off of like what I have been blessed with, then it's very easy for me to like look to the left and look to the right at what other people have. But like, I do think that the enemy works in a way too, where whatever it is that is your pain point, like mine has always been finances. And so because of that, it's so amplified when I see other people have abundance. But that sounds like I'm being a hater, but it makes me feel insignificant, and it makes you feel like, oh my gosh, like, and I think that's where this like hustle culture has come on me, as I'm always like, I brag about how hard I work, but like, that's like a slippery slope when you're burning out and you're not refilling, and again, you're putting your identity in the work you do. No good. So I think comparison came really young for me. Of course, in the way you look and things like that. But really for me, it's always been with career stuff, because I've always felt like I never had a career. And that was my own insecurity. No one ever made me feel that way. I just was like, I never had a grown-up job. Like, I didn't do a traditional route. My husband didn't do a traditional route. So that lack of stability, it's like, I know it's all going to pay off. But when you're sitting in it, it's hard not to look at other people who did do the traditional thing, and they bought a house, and then your head, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm 30, I should have bought a house 5 years ago, and then you like, I'm like, how am I going to be a mom? I can't even buy a house. Like, it's so ridiculous for me to even think about saying that out loud, but that is the process I kind of go through in my head. So When I really noticed it, that was still actually stealing my joy, was probably a year ago, when I just wasn't owning the things I was doing. And I was like, you know what? I made an Instagram reel last summer that said, it was like a trend. And it said, you look happier. And it said, thanks. I finally stopped saying I'm just a fitness coach, or like I'm just this. And I was like, you know what? Hell yeah. Because for a lot of people, like, that's the best part of their day. Or you never know how you're touching someone's life. You just never know. But if we put that on ourselves, like, yeah, I just do this, so like we make ourselves small. And so I think when I started just owning, like, no, this is what I do and it's really cool, I think it started to kind of go away a little bit for sure. And I actually, last story, just met with my friend yesterday, who is a gorgeous girl, beautiful person. She's still in the dance industry and it is very successful in it. And I love that for her. And I actually felt real free when I got in the car. I said, you know what, Lord, thank you that I didn't feel any comparison. I was worried about it. I'm like, shoot, I'm going to go into this and suddenly start picking myself apart and, oh, they have this townhouse and this, that. Honestly, I was very happy to hear she's doing well. And that was it. I was like, I'm good. Like, I didn't feel that, like, that jerk inside of me that would typically come up. It was like, oh, I love that for you. You know what I mean? So that's good. Your story includes redemption. Was there a moment in your life where everything felt like it was falling apart, but it ended up becoming, definitely, my breakup, for sure. That was like the most, I'd say, pivotal part of my life. For sure. Because like I said, it looks like in the moment everything's falling apart, and it was, in the natural it was. But how it so set me up for like what I was truly meant to do. And I will share this quick tidbit with you. There is a pastor I used to listen to a lot named Stephen Furtick. And he did a sermon. You never forget this stuff. And it was called Trapped in Transition. And I was on my way home for work, and I remember the stoplight I was at, and I remember praying a prayer. It was so weird. It was like the first time I had this revelation where I was like, oh, so if I want God to do big things in my life, I have to actually like surrender. I have to actually be willing to let go of things, right? Not, I swear to God, not thinking about my relationship at all. I was thinking about my career. And I remember praying a prayer, and I'm like, Lord, whatever you need to shift around in my life so that I am used for your purpose and like what I'm here to do, you have my permission. Girl, 2 days later, everything fell apart. 2 days later, I'm making a seating chart for a wedding, and my world is now rocked. Like, I find out all of this stuff, and like, oh my goodness, I truly was so blindsided. You know how sometimes people are like, you have this gut feeling? No, looking back, I can see the red flags, but I was so like, I can't explain it. It was like the veil was just taken off my eyes. And I think the peace I had was that through that whole season was literally knowing I meant that prayer, and literally things started to change. And so I moved back in with my family, which was fine. But then COVID happened, and I had 2 friends that were like, let's move to Pittsburgh, which doesn't seem like a big move, but being a small town girly and like being so content and complacent with where I was, that really jerked me. I'm like, I don't know, didn't have money for rent, like, truly lost in the sauce is the best way I could describe it. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take a step of faith and trust that, because I felt pulled to doing it, to starting something new. And I did. I committed to a house in Mount Washington. And literally, I remember signing the lease like shaking, because I'm like, how am I going to pay this rent? That's how faith works, though. Like, you take a step and then he meets you. And then I got a job, which was a horrible job, but I met one of my best friends there, who's still one of my best friends, and it paid my bills for a year until I went to Topgolf. And so all of that to say, I look back now at the life I've built here. I met my husband here. oh my gosh, like my whole community, our church family, like everything that has like planted me is now here. And I'm like, wow, I can see it now. You know what I mean? And that was what, 5, 6 years ago. And so in the time, I'm like, I have no idea. But I knew that like I couldn't just live back home and like again succumb to this like depression. And I was like, I'm willing to do it scared. And oh my God, it was like, thank you, Lord. Like the doors it's open and how I can really see how I am now walking in that purpose. So anyway, okay. What are you learning to love about yourself? What am I learning to love about myself? I think just in all ways, like being more confident in the things I do well. For a long time when people would compliment me on my classes or just like me as a person, or like again someone saying you're a preacher, like you're really, I think that because I was so scared of being like what's the word I'm looking for, not egotistical but like prideful, that I would have like false humility and be like, oh no. And now I'm like, no, Geena, receive that. Like, receive that. You know what I mean? Because like, if I don't believe that God's given me gifts, then that's prideful in a way. Like thinking that, you know, you can't be used to do big things. So I think what I'm learning to love about myself is coming into, like receiving a compliment. I'm really working on that and like letting it sit, you know, and again, not in a way that it goes to my head, but for years, I, I, how do I see again? I'm like struggling to say this. My classes do really well. And I don't think I'm the best teacher in the world. It's not that at all. But I do think, going back to all the things I've already shared with you, that there is a me that just comes out when I do. Anyway, and for years people would say stuff like, your classes are always full and like this, that, and the other. And it was, I would be like, oh, well, it's just because the time of day, it just works out that way and yada, yada, yada. And I think now I'm just finally getting to a place where it's like I kind of said to you earlier, will I always be a student? Absolutely. Is there always more to learn? Absolutely. I would love to explore different certifications still and learn different ways, modalities and things. But I'm starting to understand that I am an expert in this field. I do know what I'm doing. And I'm not like a baby trainer anymore, you know? And so I'm really starting to show up more confidently, especially in the fitness space. Like, you know, I watch a lot of like great trainers and some of the stuff they say like about programming, I'm like, I would have done that too. Like, you know, you just start to like realize, like, I don't know, because it's kind of like you start at the bottom of the food chain when you go into any industry. If you're a hairstyle, any service industry, you work for a gym, you hardly get paid, and you work a lot, and you just learn how to work with the public. You can't be picky about your clients. Like, you just take what you can get. And I was okay with that. But now I feel that I have more liberty to be picky. I have more liberty to be confident in what I charge. Like before, I was so scared to send people my pricing. And now I'm like, yeah, I think I'm worth that. You know? So I think that there's something to be said about that. Especially when it's your career. Like, geez, you can't be afraid to ask people to pay you when they're supposed to pay you. So I would say that, like, advocating for myself a little bit more. And knowing what you do well, I think is important. Like, again, not in a way that I would ever have this, like, big head, but I taught my first teacher training in the fall. I'm doing another one in the spring. It's like a sculpt training. And I think even a year ago, I would have been so intimidated to lead that. And I loved it. I loved every second. I feel like I led it well. Very personable, like making these girls feel like they could talk to me, of course, and like be relatable. But there was this level of confidence because, again, like I said, I'm confident that I program a good class. I'm confident that it makes sense, that the movements make sense. I'm confident that I can cue people where it's keeping them safe, but it's pushing them. You know what I mean? So all of those things have kind of like led to this point, I would say. Okay, how has this experience been for you? What has been the biggest breakthrough or realization you had during this session? Well, I love this. This is so fun to yap and I love sharing experiences and just being like human about things. I think it's so exhausting when we pretend like, it's just all good. I think what I'm learning just like sitting here talking about it is like I've overcome a lot of things, and we all have our testimony, right? We all have a story. And again, speaking about like learning to show up, is like I would diminish my testimony a lot, like because I didn't have this, like, this sounds silly, but my husband, for example, when he came to the Lord, he has a really big testimony. He was really like living a very one way, and then it like dramatically changed, right? And you hear that a lot. Somebody was, I don't know, like out on the streets, absolutely messed up on drugs, and they had this radical encounter, and suddenly, and I think because my story was never like this like dramatic transformation, although inside I feel like it's been dramatic, I would like diminish like the power of it. And I think just talking through some of the things I've walked through and like done it with resilience, I'm like, that's good. You know what I mean? Like, we are overcomers, and we all wear our stripes. And I think it's cool because it just gives you, I don't know, empathy. And I've been learning, what did just happen to me the other day and I felt like convicted about, because I can't remember who it was with. I felt like this person, I honestly can't remember. I just know that this happened in the last like week. Mm-hmm. I felt somebody was one way, and then after talking to them, it was another way. And I was like,
in a good way?
In a good way.
Okay.
In a way that, why can't I remember what it was? In a way that I was like empathetic. I'm like, oh, you've just, you've gone through things. And I think that's good for all of us. It's like, you just got to touch grass sometimes and realize like, yes, someone might seem hard-hearted, someone might seem, and it's what I've been working on a lot is not taking offense. That's like, I'm very sensitive. And so my nature, right, like for a lot of us is to be very fleshly and like get defensive if I feel like someone's, and I'm really working on like being slow to speak and quick to listen. And again, understand that we all have different life experiences. So we can't just see things from me. Mm-hmm. I think by nature we kind of do that. Like I always say, we're like the own main character of our lives. But how much power is in it to step outside of yourself and be like, how can I show up and serve someone else today? Mm-hmm. And I encourage my classes, like a lot of times when I finish my class, I say, like it's something along the lines of the joy and the gift that is to be blessed, but then to be a blessing. And trying to have, and again, I'm not perfect at this, but trying to actively make cognizant decisions to not be so me focused. Like, how can I extend, the simplest kindness to somebody else, or, encourage somebody else today, or not? Because I think one of the biggest icks is when someone's having a hard day, and whatever, we all have done this, and me included, but then you just like take it out on people, and like I really don't want to show up that way, and I feel like in my immaturity I have before, because you feel like somebody owes you something or whatever, and you're like, I'm just having a hard day, like, and heard, understood. But I think there's so much power in being able to, like, I don't know, I think it's better to give than to receive type deal. So I think that it can shift your mindset from this self-pity, maybe. I can only speak for myself, like example in finances, right? If I'm feeling insufficient in a way, or I feel scared around money or worried about it, like how can I intentionally bless somebody else? And it doesn't always have to be financially, but like, I don't know, it kind of just gets you out of like, it's like a big FU to that fear or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that had nothing to do with that question.
That's okay.
Any final thoughts? This is so cute. I feel like I said a lot. I yapped a lot. I just think it's important to, kind of going back to what I said in the last question, own your story, like I don't know, grow through what you go through, like all that corny stuff, but there is so much power in that. And I just feel like never stop sharing your testimony, never stop encouraging. And I don't know. I think for me, like being the Christian girly I am, I try to keep the mindset of it's the goodness of God that draws men to repentance. So I just try to take this perspective of what the Lord has done for me. And I just, it's like anything. It's just what you choose to focus on will grow. And my husband and I have walked through hard seasons. Like it's not been easy navigating like the things in our life, but I know it's because there's a big calling, and if we just continue to persevere, we will break that barrier for sure. But staying encouraged in that is hard. When you can only see something in the natural, it's very hard. But like as a Christian, we're called to walk by faith and not by sight. So keep like faith is so powerful. And we were given a word from one of our pastor friend, and it stuck with me. He said, only speak about the things that are going right. And it really was a conviction for me, because I was seeing things from this lens of how hard things were, and just like that life is hard type mentality. Being a Christian's hard, and all this is hard. And I really don't feel that way anymore. I feel like it's a joy to do what we're doing, and to see the lives it's touching, and in spite of the opposition we face. Now I see opposition as encouragement, because I'm like, we're on the break of something. Like, for sure, that's how this works. Like, when we were planning our big event last week, we came up against some like warfare, honestly, like some like things that I was like, oh, but what it wanted to discourage me, it fired me up, because I'm like, Kaylin, we're gonna have breakthrough, and we did. It was beautiful, and I'm just like, it was just encouraging to see the opposition as opportunity, and continuing on with grit and grace, like through that, through any obstacle, anything we go through, is like we have a choice to react, to respond, whatever, and only speak about the things going right, because the power of life and death is in the tongue. So if we choose to continue to speak life, and over your situation, over your health, over your family, whatever it is you're believing for, I do believe it has the power to shift the reality. I really do. So
thank you, Geena.
These are my final thoughts.